Alright, good morning guys. I'm going to do the rib stitching or start on the project today. First thing I'm going to do is lay out the spacing on the wing. So I'm going to go from the aft edge of the composite leading edge, which is right here. I'm going to start the first stitch at 1 1/4 inches back from that. And then I'm going to go every 2.5 inches from there. That's according to the polyfiber manual. And I'm going to lay them out on the number 3 rib and the number 10 rib and then snap a chalk line so that they're across all of them. And then the 1 and 2, you just have that small portion behind the fuel tank, so I'll measure those out as well. So they should all match all the way down the wing that way. I will try to capture as much of this with the time lapse as I can, but I'm also going to slow down, and I am going to do instructionals on the rib stitch, starting and stopping a stitch once I figure it out. There are some other good YouTube videos which I can provide a link to, but I don't want to have you guys have to stop in the middle of watching the wing build or the fabric covering on my videos and go watch some other video just to come back and understand what I'm doing. So I'll try to put that all in these videos as I do it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in time-lapse mode, and I'm going to get started on laying out the stitch spacing. Chalk lines made, spacings 1 1/4 back from the trailing edge, and then 2.5 inches all the way back, or from the aft end of the leading edge all the way to the trailing edge. So now the trick is to transfer those to the bottom side to account for the different curvature of the top and the bottom, because all these stitches have to be not angled like that, but straight up and down in relationship basically to what would normally be a straight spar, but since we have a round spar, it'd be a reference point, which would basically be, I would use the angle of incidence as would be your perpendicular point that we're going to be measuring that from. In order to do that, they want you to make a cardboard cutout to match the butt rib, and then mark all these points on that piece of cardboard, and then use a square to transfer the lines to the bottom of it. It looks real easy when they do it in the manual because they don't have protruding spars and it's not in a jig. So my problem right now is that this is in a jig and I can't make that cardboard piece, but I do have the butt ribs right here. So I should be able to transfer this cutout onto a piece of cardboard, and I can actually cut out where the spars come through, and then transfer the rib lacing onto that cardboard. Alright guys, so about ready to lay this reinforcing tape down. It's a 1/4 inch tape that's provided from Kitfox, and the ridge caps are about a 1/2 inch wide. So what you want to do, and I just talked to John at Kitfox, so this is where I got this information, is you want to lay 2 strips down side by side, and you want to put them on the edge of each ridge cap. That will allow the pressure of the stitch to lay on this tape instead of the fabric over the edge of the wood. You also want to leave 1 inch above the first stitch and below the last stitch. If you can get a whole 1 inch, I'm going to get about 1/2 before I hit the trailing edge piece, and I don't want it to hang over on the trailing edge. So I'll do about 1 inch and then about a 1/2 inch. I'm pointing at the number 1 rib. We don't stitch this one, but it is the closest one in the camera, so that's why I'm showing it to you. So we'll stitch number 2 out to number 9, and that's it. Once this is down, I also was told that it's a good idea to lay one coat of polybrush over the top of it before you do your stitching. Once you're done with the stitching, go over the stitch and the reinforcing tape with an iron and get it to lay as flat as possible. So I'm going to be doing that. So I'll go ahead and keep the camera running in time lapse while I go ahead and put all this down, top and bottom. I hope there's enough. Okay, so I got all the reinforcing tapes laid down, top and bottom. Now I'm just going through with the lacing needle and making all the holes for the thread on the top and the bottom. Go through and do that in advance, and then I can start doing the lacing. So that's going to take probably another half hour or so to go through and pre-poke all the holes, top and bottom. And then I got to sit down and figure out how to do the stitch. So once I figure that out, I'll do a little clip on how to do the stitch. It's coming along. There's been a couple places I noticed that the hole lines up with the spar. So that's going to be a little tricky to try to get that lace done. I'm going to have to come this way and then back that way. I don't know what I'm going to do there. That can be avoided by making a lace template prior to covering it, because I can't see what's underneath it now. So it's pointed out after the fact, but if I made like a piece of aluminum or something that I could lay across the top of the ridge caps on the wing that's not covered, then I can lay out my pattern so that I'm sure that it won't interfere with anything underneath the fabric. So anyway, so I'm going to start poking holes, make sure I can get the needle clear through to the bottom on all of them. Alright guys, so I'm going to attempt to demonstrate this rib lacing. Seeing how I've done one rib, I am by far not good at this. But I want to tell you a couple things that I found really frustrating with not having the proper tools. I have, with the kit, a completely straight needle with no bent tip on it, which doesn't allow you to feed from one hole directly to the next hole on the top. You got to go down through the opposite hole and then back up. It's a pain in the ass. So first thing I'll be doing is getting some more needles. The other thing is it comes with a curved needle, or at least this kit did, this little teeny curved needle. I'm doing 2.5 inch spacing, so you need at least 2.5 inches from the tip to the tip on the curve, or else it doesn't do you any good. You can maybe go underneath a rib and back up, but you can't go between your stitches, so that's not helpful yet. I did try to heat this one up and bend it and broke the tip off, so I've now reground the tip. I mean, these are just some of the things I've been dealing with today. Started stitching at about, or watching the video and trying to figure out the stitching about maybe 2 or 3 hours ago, and have finished one rib. So the other thing that has come up is with that 2.5 inch spacing, there are 2 ribs where you can't go straight down to the bottom and then back up because the spar's in the way. You could probably lay out your spacing better so that doesn't happen. I was off by 1/8 of an inch, which is really frustrating. There are ways around it, and it would be super easy to do if you had a curved or bent needle. So I would want a needle this long that had like maybe a banana shape to it. That would be awesome. I'd also want this needle to have a hook on the end, like they recommend in the polyfiber manual, so that you can feed it through from one hole to the next on the top of the fabric. So this is all I have right now, so I'm making do. It's like a little mind game trying to figure out how to weave it to get it from one hole to the next when you can't do it the way they say because of the non-bent end. That being said, long-winded, I'm going to start by taking about arm's length twice, and that still won't get me the full rib. I'll have to start twice, at least 2 starting knots. But if you get much more than that, it's just a pain in the ass to handle that much string. It gets on the ground and gets all dirty. So a little bit different starting method than is in the polyfiber book. I watched this lady on YouTube, and I kind of like her method better. So I'll turn the camera so you can see what I'm doing. I'll try to talk my way through it. I'll put the link to her video because I think she'll do a much better job explaining it than I do. Although the filming of that one's a little too zoomed in, so you can't see the short end and the long end of the string. Okay, so we're going to refer to this as north, this is east, west, and south. I know that's backward on the east and west, but it's not on the top. When you look at it the proper way, you got west, east, west, east, okay? So I'm going to start on the bottom, and I'm going to go up the east side, and out the top, and I want to leave about a needle and a half, maybe almost 2 needles worth of slack on the bottom there. So pull it through, measure my needle. That's probably about good. Okay. Now I'm going to go back down the west side. In this case, my right side. Okay. This is the part she doesn't show you in her video. That pulls through. What I do want to do is make sure I'm not crossed on the top. Make sure it's a flat string, so you want to make sure it's flat without any twists in it. Okay. Oop. I still got you on view. I told you this was going to be a cluster. All right. So basically what we want to do here is a square knot. So however you guys are familiar with doing a square knot, you loop over one, and then you come back the other way, So you have a crisscross. That one nice and tight. And okay. Now you have a short end and a long end. They're both going to be needed. You're going to need to run the needle back up through both. You want the long end on the east side or on the left side. So that's going to go back up through the hole. Okay, and then I'll just leave that string hanging. And then I'm going to take the needle. The reason I left so much slack here is I'm going to feed that through the needle and go up the west side or the right side. The other thing that's complicated about the way the lady does the video is you're looking at it, she's doing it upside down. So she can't refer to left or right, that's why she does the east-west thing. Sorry about the squeakiness. Alright, so that should be in view. Pretty good. Now we've got short one on the right or the west side and the long one on the left or east side. Okay, so go ahead and thread the needle through the short one. We'll find out why later. Oop. I've got a second needle I'm using just to help me with the knots. It's not long enough to go through the wing, but I'll show you why that kind of comes in helpful here. Alright, so what I'm going to do again is the same thing I did on the bottom with the square knot. Okay, so over and under and over. Catch 2 knots, tighten the bottom one, top one. Alright, so now you have your short one on the west again after doing the square knot. We're going to thread that needle, and we're going to, that needle's too long to do this, but let's use the short one. Okay, so we're just going to take that and we're going to feed it underneath both of those and create a half hitch by coming back through the loop, and you're just going to pull that up tight against the square knot. Okay. Do the same thing on the other side. Under both of them. That creates a loop. You're going to come through the loop and then pull that half hitch up tight. So now you have a half hitch on either side of the square knot. Okay, now you're going to take the short end and go back down the west side and out the other end. Okay, I'll show you why we're going to do that here. Get rid of that other needle. Wish I had 2 long needles, that would make it easier. Okay, so we're going to come down out the bottom. Now you go ahead and just pull that needle off the thread and leave that hanging. That's going to stay there. Okay. Now you won't be able to see what I'm doing underneath, but I'm going to take this thread remaining and I'm going to reach under and grab that thread I just pulled through. I'm going to pull this one towards the west or towards my right as I pull down on the other string. And it's just going to slide that knot over the edge and you can hear it pop down inside the fabric. So that's your starter knot, and that's what you want it to look like. Now, the other thing they don't tell you about is what to do with this guy. So what we're going to do with it is cut it off. I don't know what I did with my scissors. We're just going to cut it off real close and then just take the needle and poke that thread back inside. Oh, there's my back pocket. Okay, so you just take that and cut it off. Toss that piece away, and you can take your needle and just poke that back inside the wing. There you go. So that's all done on that side. So that's your starter knot. Now to continue, it would be absolutely fantastic if I had a bent nose needle. And here's why I'm struggling and taking so long to do this, because I don't have that needle. So first of all, don't start this without that. So what you would do now is you would come back through this hole and you would slide the needle right up to the next hole, and with the bent end you could feed it through and you'd be good to go. But I don't have the bent end, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down through the hole opposing the one I want to go in. Then I'm going to come up from that one. Alright, so I put the stitch down through this and I'm bringing it up through this side. So basically all I did was take the line from here, from this hole to this hole. Okay, there you go. So, came up this side, I'm going to go down the left or the east side and out the bottom hole. When I do that, I'm going to leave a little bit of slack up here, okay? Then I'm going to come right across from left to right and back up the other side. And then you're going to come right back up the same hole as before. So again, sorry for the squeaky wing. So now you have this loop here and the needle sticking out. Pick up the loop, you're going to drop it across like that and over the top. That's your knot. So we'll show you one more time. Here's your loop. You're going to take the left side over the right side, and then you're just going to drop it over the needle. Oop, like that. So one more time. Left side over the right side, drop the loop over the needle. Okay? Then you can pull your needle through, take up some of the slack. Okay, there's your sin knot. Then we're going to come through here. Bugs flying in here. Through here, and then you're going to take a loop here. You go underneath this, underneath the thread, and over the top of that. That's your secondary knot or your half hitch. Okay. Now, before you tighten that, you want to get all the slack out of the first knot by pulling to the left, then back to the right, left, back to right, left, back to right. That knot disappears down inside the wing. Now, same thing. Take the second knot, and you're going to pull on that thread to the left, get it tight, back to the right, keeps it tight, and it disappears down into the wing. Okay? Now, I keep having this problem now of not having this thread flat, so you can kind of go back through with the needle and flatten it out, and then roll it flat into the hole. But if you keep it flat from the beginning, it'd be much better, because those are going to be, you want to get that iron down later, and so there's no bump there, because those will show. So that's it. The only thing that you add is, if this is the last stitch, you're just going to do one more half hitch by going underneath here, over the top of that thread, pull it through, and you're going to tighten it down, and that is just going to add another half hitch to end the thread, or end the stitch. So that's the only thing I would add to that. That's it. All right, guys, the rib stitching's done. I started it about midday yesterday and finished this morning. I've been out here about 45 minutes, finished the last 3. So I'd say in total it took maybe 4 or 5 hours to do it, which is way quicker than I thought it was going to be. There were some hassles that I ran into with not having more needle options. And if you go look at the cost of these needles, they are really proud of them. So I actually had a friend suggest taking some welding rod, smash down the end, drill a hole in it so you can put the thread through it, and then slightly sharpen the end, and then you can bend those welding rods in any direction, curve, whatever you want. There's a couple places where I may want to do a stitch just to the top cap of the rib, and that's right here, because underneath this one is the pitot tube. So I may run down and get some welding rod just to create a nice curved needle, because the curved needle I have isn't a big enough radius. And to explain that, to do the curved needle, you have to come through the hole and then all the way across to the next hole here. So you go through and then to this one, and then this one back to that one, because you can't make that turn right there. If you do it, it ends up poking it out too far. So you go through here to this one, then back to that one to get your thread across. Then you just do basically your starter knot. Then you need to take the thread back down over to this one, and then back over to this one and pull it back up so that you can pull that thread and rock that knot underneath. I did one with this curved needle right here, and I had to put an extra hole in just to get the thread working around. And I'm not going to continue to do that because I don't want extra holes in my fabric. That was just kind of a tester, and I won't do that again. So if I had a bigger needle, basically one that could span between these holes, which I could make out of welding rod, then I'd be good to go on those last 2 stitches I want to do. And if I really want to finish the stitch on the bottom of the number 2 rib cap. So that's it. That's a long-winded explanation of the stitching. Hopefully the example I did was understandable. Reading instructions on how to tie a knot, I've never been able to do. I mean, from fishing to tying flies, if I look at the drawings and read the explanation, it makes no sense to me at all. I have to visually see how it's done. I will provide that link to that lady on the YouTube video that I watched to get it down. Again, it was zoomed in too close so you couldn't see the ends. The short end, the long end, and the stitch, that's important. So basically, it just takes a little bit of practice, and then once you get it down, it goes pretty quick. So I think the next wing will go real fast. The stitching has turned out to be kind of a pleasant surprise. I thought it was going to be the most time-consuming thing on the wing. It isn't. So it knocked out pretty quick. So I'm going to move on to doing some ironing now, and then I'll probably go get some welding rod and try to just clean up just to make it all uniform on those stitches. All right, guys, so I completed the stitching. I added the extra stitches on the rib above the pitot tube. And then I added these stitches along the bottom of the number 2. It's basically just that false ridge cap on the bottom. I went ahead and put those stitches in, also just to keep it uniform. They've all been ironed flat, and now I'm ready to start adding some poly brush over each of those seams so I can get ready to add the tapes. Alright, I'm going to wrap this one up here, and stay tuned for the next episode. Should be out in a week or 2 as I do part 3 of the wing, which covers the final finished tapes and getting it ready for the spray booth. And as always, I'll leave you with a little bit of flying footage. This is what helps keep me motivated during my build, and I thought you guys would enjoy it as well.
Anytime past that. Nice. Yeah, about short. Beautiful.
I'm Brian with Bowen Aero LLC, and we're a dealer for Behringer brake systems. Give me a call at 541-840-7400, or you can email me at bowenaero@yahoo.com. And don't forget to order your stiff grips before Christmas.
Stole rats.